Welcome to Imprint, a podcast about creating a home and life you love. I'm Natalie Walton, an interior designer, stylist, and best-selling author focused on an holistic approach to homes. Each week, I'm sharing insights and interviews about the creative process to help you enhance both your interiors and well-being, as well as provide you with the tools and resources to make considered and sustainable choices with all that you create. Hello everyone, welcome to Imprint. I'm very grateful to have you here today, and I wanted to talk about some books that are a little bit different. If you are a creative business owner, if you are really looking to grow your business and take it to that next level, we need to learn different skills, because it's not enough to just love what you do. It's not enough to be good at what you do. What we really need to do is we need to implement systems and processes and really understand how business works. And so often we can put our head in the sand about this and think, oh, I'll leave that to someone else, or almost even pretend that it doesn't exist. But if we take that approach, we're just setting ourselves up for failure or stress or, financial pressure. So there are so many great business books out there, and there are also some ones that aren't that great. And over the years, I have read and listened to many of them. And so today I wanted to share some of my favorites, some that I go back to over and over again, or that they've had a big impact on the way that I think about business, the way that I approach doing business, and the way that has really helped me grow my own business. Now, as with any book, you take from it what you find helpful and you leave what you don't. So some of these books, there are some key ideas that have really resonated, and others, I've sort of picked and choose and adapted it to what works within my business. And actually coming up within Design and Grow, my group coaching program, next quarter, we're focusing on systems. And so I will be sharing within that, all the ways that I've adapted these ideas into systems that have really enabled me to not only grow my businesses, but really get them to a point where they're self-managing in many ways. And I don't have to be in the business all the time. I can work on different areas of not only different projects, but, working with clients that I want to work with. And so it means that I don't always have to be like head down in the business all the time. So I trust that you're going to find this really valuable. And like I said, I really want to share with you what's been really helpful for me on my journey in terms of helping me to expand my mind, learn some really valuable lessons and make continual personal and professional development. So let's get into it. So one of the first books that I came across was a book called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. I don't even know how I came across this book. It's sort of got a cover that is not typical of a lot of business books. I think for a long time, there was a very formulaic way that business books would be presented in terms of their covers. And this one was a little bit different. Basically, it's got like a scribble, a really big scribble, and then it's got a line, a little arrow, and then it's got the words essentialism with circles drawn around it. And there's just something so compelling about that illustration to kind of go from chaos to, focus. And it really intrigued me, this idea of like, okay, what is essentialism about? And to be honest, I think when I first was reading it, I was curious about that in terms of more lifestyle and how can we get down to the essence of what's important in relation to our homes and how we live. But really, in many ways, it is actually a business book. And so the subtitle for the book is called The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. And I know that when I picked up this book, I was very much in a season of really looking at how can I do less? How can I really get down to what is most important? At that particular point, I remember reading this around the time that I was writing my book, This Is Home. And so this would have been about 7 years ago now. And so I had probably just had my fourth child, and I was really focused on like, I need to find a way to be able to, run a family, be a great mom, be a great partner, grow a business because I was the primary income earner, and all of these things. And how can I do this in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming? And this book really gave me so many tools, and really more than anything, it gave me permission to focus on what was most important to me. And that was really, really valuable. So, like I said, this was kind of one of the first business style books that I read, and it really did transform the way that I thought about how I manage my time, how I manage my priorities, and really learn how to focus on what's most important. Like I said, you can apply these ideas to your home, to your life, and your business. This is a book that I also listened to and read as well. And I've actually read it several times. It's kind of quite dog-eared. And I'm going to share with you some of the quotes, and I hope that these really resonate with you. So Greg McKeown talks about this idea that an essentialist, so he sort of talks about essentialism, and if you become an essentialist in this way, that it is a way of living by design, not by default. And I think so many of us can resonate to this idea that we can so often live by default and not even create awareness about how we're living. We're just doing things on autopilot. And so I would really encourage you to think about, what are you doing on autopilot right now? And try and carve out some time to pause and really look at the choices that you're making, the way that you're living. What are the things that you're doing that if you had to choose again, would you choose to do things that way? And taking time to re-choose is really valuable. It's a really valuable lesson to re-choose on purpose and think, yes, I would still live in this house, or yes, I would still send my kids to this school, or yes, I would still have this type of business or work with these types of clients. So really think about that for yourself. If you had to re-choose everything that you have going on in your life, would you re-choose this, or would you choose something else? And if you would choose something else, what would that be? Because like I said, it's so easy to live by default, but I really encourage you to think about, okay, how can I live by design instead? And I touched on this at the start, and I said, that I went through a big season of looking at ways that I could really simplify. And now so much of this is so ingrained in how I live. I don't think about it in terms of, this is something that I'm proactively doing, because it's actually just something that I do all the time. I'm constantly, evaluating and reflecting, setting goals, looking at okay, is this still working for us as a family? Is this something that we still want to be doing? Is this still working for us as a business? Is this still working for me in terms of what brings me joy in terms of my work? And I think it's really important to ask yourself these questions. He also said, if you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. This was something that I had to be really intentional with. I realized that for many years, I was living my life based on other people's priorities and saying yes to so many things, saying yes to, play dates with kids or birthday parties. And I kind of got to that point of realizing, you know what? I don't actually have to do these things. I don't have to go to every single kid's birthday party. I don't have to go on every time somebody invites me for dinner or coffee. And yes, those things can be really nice, but sometimes you can be in a circle of friends and you might be connected with people that ultimately you're not on the same journey. And I think it is really important to think about, what are your priorities for your life, and are you living by those? Are you making your priorities a priority, or are you on somebody else's agenda? It's really easy to get caught up in what other people are doing. And I do feel that as a mum for 4 children, as somebody who's running a business, I have to be really, really intentional with how I spend my time. And often that can look like actually doing nothing on the weekend. And that is how I refuel. That is how I fill my cup, so that then during the week, I can be on in terms of work. And it's really important that, and when I say do nothing, I mean, often it's like going to the beach with the kids, or I mean, increasingly it has been going to some sporting activities, but for a long time we said no sporting activities on the weekend. So that has started to change as the children are getting a little bit older, and that's okay too, but when they were younger, we were quite strong in terms of like, no, we're going to have a season where we're not just going to go and do everything that we're invited to, only the things that feel like they feel that we really want to go, which takes me to this next quote that I use often, still to this day. I mean, I use this with clients as well. And he says, if it isn't a clear yes, then it's a clear no. So when you have a decision you're trying to make, if it's not like, this is a no-brainer, this is a hell yes, this is like absolutely like big yes, then it's a no. And when you use that as a framework for decision making, it is amazing how many decisions that you have are just, you just need to have faith that like, yes, that is your instinct, that is your intuition saying that I do this or I don't do this. And so I'm just going to repeat that for you because this is really, really, like I said, quite powerful. If it isn't a clear yes, then it's a clear no. He also says, I can do anything but not everything. And again, this is just such a beautiful way to filter that, we can't do everything. So we have to decide what are the things that we are going to do. I actually heard somebody being interviewed and he said that the way that he thinks about being a dad is that he's got 18 summers with his children. And when you think about that, it's like, wow, like it really does go so quickly. And I've got a 16-year-old and very shortly, he's not going to be interested in having summer holidays with his family. And to really be intentional with how you spend your time, whether it relates to summer holidays, whether it relates to your children, whether it relates to what you choose to do in your business. Because so often, and I see this over and over within my program Design and Grow, is that so many people just want to keep adding things like, I'm going to make this offer and do this thing and this thing. And really that is, first of all, it's a fast track to burnout. You're not going to be able to have really clear messaging because you're going to be talking about 10 different things. And it's just, you're not going to have the bandwidth to do that. So again, I can do anything, but not everything. I also like that he does talk about the importance of play. And this was something that really informed my writing for This Is Home. And he said, imagination is the source of every form of human achievement. So in this day and age where we are, inundated with so much inspiration and so much in terms of imagery and content, and we can consume, so much in terms of, this podcast. And, of course, I really appreciate you being here. But, I think we can really get into that cycle of just consuming so much social media, imagery, books, and I know I'm talking about books, but we do need to also give ourselves some white space to really allow our imagination to work through things and be playful and engage in different activities that can kickstart our imagination in different ways. So it's so important to carve out white space in your days. And I really like the message behind that. Okay, my next book that I'm going to talk about is called This Is Marketing. You Can't Be Seen Until You Learn to See by Seth Godin. I have actually read several of Seth Godin's books. I've listened to some of his podcasts, and I really like his kind of short, sharp, witty sort of New York style of writing. I'm just calling it a New York style of writing, but he's really succinct with the way that he writes. He doesn't write in a fluffy way. He doesn't write in a kind of marketing speak way. He doesn't beat around the bush. He communicates really clearly and in a way that feels really genuine. And he also never sounds like he's trying to push a program, even though he's had various programs over the years. Sometimes I feel that there's a lot of marketing books that basically are just that top of funnel experience for you to get into their program or their system. And it's really about trying to convince you that their method or their process is like the best way out there, and it's just a marketing tool. And while obviously he is a marketing expert and he's writing marketing books, but they feel like they're really getting to the truths of what marketing is, which I really appreciate. I also really enjoy listening to his books as audiobooks. So I've both listened and read this book as well. And I feel like this one is a really great overview of the importance of marketing and how and why you should focus on people who love what you do. And so he talks about this idea of, and he's citing somebody else's work, but this idea that you just need 1,000 true fans. I think he's actually a big fan of the Grateful Dead. I don't really know much about the Grateful Dead, but he does talk about them in the sense of they're this really obscure band, but they have got hardcore followers that will buy like every t-shirt, and they will do everything. And you don't need to have a massive audience, but what you really want to try and do is cultivate 1,000 true fans. And if you've got 1,000 fans that will pay you, and I'm going to stuff this up, let's say $100 a year, then you can have like a 6-figure business, or if they pay $1,000 a year or whatever that is. But this idea that you don't need to be everything for everyone, but how can you cultivate that? And he gives some really great examples of like bakeries where people, they will cross town to go to this particular bakery, and they kind of get these fans that like, oh, you have to go to this bakery. And like, this is the type of thing that we really need to do in our business. We need to create businesses that people talk about, because that is such a powerful way to spread the word of what is possible like for your business and how to get that word out as well. So he talks about every very good customer gets you another one. So how can you create these good customers? How can you create an experience that they love your product? They're so passionate about your product that they feel compelled to talk to other people. And there is such a compounding effect of that. If you have one person who has an amazing experience with your product or service, that they will then go and tell, say, like 5 other people, and how that can just spread, and that can have a huge impact on your marketing as well. He says, you haven't made an impact until you've changed someone. And so again, he talks about this idea of we really need to think about how can we change somebody's experience in relation to our product or service. So they're not just like, oh, that was okay, but how can we really create this transformative result, even if it is related to food? And, like people are like, oh, this was amazing. This was the best meal that I had, or there's something about that experience that people just love it so much. He says, which is so true, he says, how to know if you have a marketing problem? You aren't busy enough. So if you aren't busy enough in your business right now, you have a marketing problem. And that is, a really succinct and simple way to say that. He says, people don't want what you make. They want what it will do for them. They want the way it will make them feel. And I talk about this idea a lot, about that we really need to get to the essence of how people are going to feel when they experience our product or our service. Always get back to that. And he said, ship your work. It's good enough. Then make it better. Oh, this is so, so true. I talk about this idea a lot in my book Style, and I also talk about it a lot with people within Design and Grow. It's so easy to get into analysis paralysis, but we just need to create something. We need to put it out there, and we need to then get feedback and make improvements. If we're getting stuck and like, oh, it's going to be perfect, or I've got to do this, I've got to do that, you will never grow your business if you think that way. Okay, the next book I want to talk to you about is Building a Story Brand. Clarify your message so customers will listen. I first discovered Donald Miller on a podcast, and I really loved. He's a very personable kind of person, and so I immediately bought the book, and it really didn't disappoint. And he talks about storytelling in terms of like there are some ancient principles in terms of storytelling and how we can use these to talk about our product or our services in relation to our messaging and our marketing. And again, I listened to this book, I read this book, and I it really helped give me a lot of clarity in relation to messaging. He says, nobody will listen to you if your message isn't clear. And so often we can't talk back about our message, about what we do in a clear, succinct way. You need to be able to, talk about what you do, how you help people in a one-liner, in a simple sentence that is really clear and compelling. He says, even if we have the best product in the marketplace, we'll lose to an inferior product if our competitor's offer is communicated more clearly. So I want you to think about how clearly you speak about your product or service. Is it really clear? So often, just as a little aside, but related to this, I will see people's Instagram accounts and it's not even clear that they're an interior designer or, what sort of service or product they offer. Sometimes they don't even have their name on their Instagram bio. And it's, how can you build a business if people don't even know what your name is or how you can help people or what is the service or the product that you're offering? He says, in every line of copy we write, we're either serving the customer's story or descending into confusion. We're either making music or making noise. So what are you doing? Are you making music or are you making noise in relation to the copy that you're writing? And we really need to be, solving somebody's problem. And he talks about this idea of, and this was, I think, like one of the biggest takeaways from this book, of putting the customer as the hero of the story. Instead of talking about like, I do this and I do that. And, instead we're talking about, we want to switch that to using language that's more about you. Like, how can we help you? Or you might be experiencing this problem and we can help you in this way. So really like putting the customer as, the hero of our messaging. So it's not just about us, but they can really identify themselves in anything that we talk about. And he says, never assume people understand how your brand can change their lives. Tell them. Oh, that's so good. We just need to state it clearly. So often we can be, really verbose about the way that we talk about our product or our service. And we need to just make it super, super clear. And again, really recommend that book if you're struggling with your messaging. Okay, 2 more books and I'll keep it short and sweet. The next one is called Traction, Get a Grip on Your Business by Gino Wickman. I had heard many different business people out there talking about this book. It's sold over 1 million copies. It really is. It's based on this idea of the entrepreneur operating system. So if you are an entrepreneur, it's really about how can you get the systems and processes into your business. It is very businessy. So this is really something that if you've got a business, really if you've got a team, this is a really great way to manage it. This is something that I've used this as a foundation for what we do within our business, but really tweaked it to make it relevant to us as creatives and the type of business that I run. And that's kind of, like I said, what I share within Designer Grow. But it is a good foundation. And I think it's a good guide in that sense. He says, you are not your business. Your business is an entity in and of itself. Yes, you created it, but in order to find success, you have to turn it into a self-sustaining organism. And I think that so many of us who have personal brands as well, where our name is connected to our business, particularly if you're, say, an interior designer or you are some type of coach. I have health coaches in my program and people come to you, they know your name. And while you might offer coaching as a service or interior design as a service or home organization or styling, but it is so woven into your name that we can get sometimes hung up on that and take everything so personally. But instead, what we really need to do is we need to see our business as its own thing. It is an entity and we need to treat it as a business. We need to manage it and create systems and processes around this thing. Even if it is connected to our name, that is how we are ultimately going to create that freedom for ourselves within it. He says, focus everyone's energy toward one thing and amazing results will follow. So often we can have so many ideas within our business, and I've touched on this before. And when we have a team and we have lots of ideas, this is where you can just end up being really inefficient because people feel like, oh, are we working on this thing? Oh no, now we're working on that thing. And they're getting pulled in lots of different directions. So to really have that clarity in terms of these are our core goals or our focus for this quarter or for this year in terms of how we're running our business, and really have a clear goal that everyone knows and understands is really important, especially when you're starting to grow a team. This is really powerful as well, especially for those of you who are perfectionists or have tendencies in this way. By hanging on to all the tiny details, you're actually constricting the company's growth. Just think about that for a minute. By hanging on to all the tiny details, you're actually constricting the company's growth. I was talking to one of my clients within Design and Grow about this, and I said to her, it was a little bit of a tough love conversation, but that, she's actually making impeding the revenue growth of her business by holding on to everything so tightly. And there comes a time where we actually have to empower our staff and give them more responsibility and set up those systems and processes. And look, we can have those checkpoints where we make sure that things are done the way that we want them to be done. But if we try and do everything ourselves, our company won't grow. It's really, really important to know and understand this. He also says, the sooner that you accept that you have issues, the better off you're going to be. You will always have them. Your success is in direct proportion to your ability to solve them. This was actually really freeing for me when I came across this idea, because I think that sometimes we can think like, oh, everyone's business is perfect and no one's facing issues or struggling with different things. But every single business has issues. And so a key part of the framework that he talks about is that every week you discuss and resolve and focus on the different issues that you're facing that week. And these can be from little things to bigger things. But when you actually address them, and it's like, okay, this is holding us up, or, this is becoming a problem, or we're struggling with this area of the business, then when you face those on, you can actually solve them. It's like, okay, this is an issue. How are we going to solve it? Versus thinking like, oh gosh, I'm just going to pretend that this is actually not an issue. But really it is. And the more that you try and sweep it under the rug, the more that you try and pretend that it doesn't exist, the more that it's actually going to have a stranglehold on you. So think about for yourself, what are some of the issues that you're facing in your business right now, and get those on an agenda and actually, face them head on and look at ways that you can solve them, because that is going to be so much more powerful in terms of actually getting results than pretending that they don't exist. He also says, when more than one person is accountable, nobody is. So this is for those of you who do have a team and maybe you've got certain projects. It's really important that somebody is responsible for different areas. When that you've got too many people working on something at once and there's not a clear leader on that particular project, it just gets very gray, very wishy-washy. And this is where you can have huge inefficiencies in your business. And then this is so good. This is one of those ones that applies to business, to life, to design, to so many different areas. More is lost by indecision than by wrong decisions. I'm just going to repeat that because I think this is really important. More is lost by indecision than by wrong decisions. What are you being indecisive about right now? Because we can so often think like, oh, I'm not sure this is the right time to invest in my business. I'm not sure if we should do this. I'm not sure if I should take on this client. I'm not sure if I should, have this product. I'm not sure if I should hire someone. Every time that we live in like this world of like, I don't know, or with the land of confusion, I've spoken about this before on the podcast. When we live in the land of confusion, we actually stall our growth. It is actually better to say, okay, I'm going to try this. And if this doesn't work out, then I've actually learned something. And that is more powerful than staying in that world of indecision. So really think about that for yourself. What are you being indecisive about? And how can you move into action? How can you test something in the minimum viable way rather than, thinking, yeah, should I do this? Shouldn't I do this? Just try. Try and you'll get data, and then you can make a decision based on that data. But you won't be just swirling in confusion for so much longer. Okay, the last book, 10x is Easier Than 2x by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. How world-class entrepreneurs achieve more by doing less. It's interesting actually that I've kind of bookmarked, no pun intended, this series of books by 2 books that really talk about this idea of doing less. Because as I said, this is like a core value of mine. How can I do more in less time? Or not that I just want to keep putting things on my plate, but how can I be really focused and intentional on what I do, that those things are going to be the ones that really get me results. So this book is a bit more of a recent read, and like I said, it's based on this interesting concept that when you take a 10x mindset approach, you can achieve more by doing less. So it's really a tool to help you focus on what's most important and going to get you the best result. This is what they say. 2x is linear, meaning you're striving to double output by doubling effort. 2x is exhausting and soul defeating. By contrast, 10x is so big and seemingly impossible that it immediately forces you out of your current mindset and approach. You can't work 10x harder or longer. And I love this idea that when we think I want to 2x my revenue, or I want to sort of improve in some way. When we try and think about it in terms of sometimes those incremental approaches, we just keep doing the same thing that we've always done. And look, yes, there is some benefit for that being consistent, and the James Clear atomic habits of 1% improvement every day compounds over time. I definitely believe that. But I do love this idea of, if you were to ask yourself, how can I 10x my business? How can I experience 10x growth? And this can, again, you can really apply this to different areas of your life. I mean, he uses the example of Michelangelo and his output. It's kind of like the idea of the 10,000 hours theory. If you were to sort of 10x your output, what would that mean? How would that look? What would you need to do? And what results would you get as a consequence of that? So if you were to try and 10x your business, how would you do things differently? What would look, there would be immediately some things you would be like, that's actually just not worth my time doing. I'm going to focus on working with these clients or these projects, or I'm going to put these systems in place. So it's a really powerful question to ask yourself. And they say 10x isn't about more, it's about less. And that's the key to this. It's not about trying to do more. It's about, okay, if I'm going to try and do 10x, then I'm not going to try and do everything. I'm going to try and do a few things really, really well. So again, what does that look like for you? And they say 10x, just as 10x isn't about more but less, 10x is also not about quantity, it's about quality. And this loops back to the Seth Godin idea of, how can we create something that is memorable? How can we create an experience that people feel compelled to share? And so, so many of these ideas overlap, but I love this idea of, instead of focusing on quantity, how can we focus on quality? They also say 10x becomes your perpetual filter for everything that you do. And also, if you're willing to commit and let everything go that you don't really want, then your life will be infinitely easier, simpler, and more successful than it's ever been. So like I said, I just love this idea of, how can you do 10x in relation to your business or your life or your health goals or whatever is really important to you right now, and what comes up for you. If you were to go 10x, then what would you let go of? Because most likely you don't actually need to do that thing right now anyway. I'm just going to quickly run over the titles again. We will share these in the show notes as well as links to the books so that you can go and check those out. So we've got number 1, Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit of Less by Greg McKeown. Number 2, This is Marketing by Seth Godin. Number 3, Donald Miller, Building a Story Brand. Number 4, Traction by Gino Wickman. And number 5, 10x is Easier Than 2x by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I would love to hear from you if you found this episode helpful, if you've read any of these books, if you buy any of them and you enjoy them, please let me know. Send me a DM on Instagram. I'd love to hear from you. And let me know if you'd like more episodes like this. I've done one recently about creative books and the creative process, and this is about some business books. And I think that I've just finished one that I have absolutely loved. My husband has been listening to it. He really loves it. So I'm thinking of doing an episode about that one because it's got so many great ideas in there. So listen out for that as well. But please let me know what you think in the review section. If you've enjoyed this, give it a 5-star rating. And as I said, love to hear from you on Instagram too. Have a beautiful week. Look forward to connecting again with you soon. All of the links and info for this episode are at nataliewalton.com/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can get a direct download of the latest episode. And I really appreciate when you take a minute to rate and review, as well as share the love with someone you know who might benefit from this episode, or on social media. If you'd like to access a range of free resources, come visit my website, nataliewalton.com. Thank you to Jaeger Media for producing this podcast. And I would also like to acknowledge the people of the Bundjalung Nation where it was recorded, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I look forward to connecting again soon. I'm Natalie Walton, and you've been listening to Imprint.